I would like to welcome you to our new online talk show, hosted by Irene K. The name of the online talk show is A Conversation with Irene K. Irene will speak on a number of topics like health, comedy, fashion, entertainment, history, science, all genres of music, religion and cooking. You can email us if you have questions for our guest. This is our third show. Our guest today is Terri Fricon, President and CEO of the Fricon Entertainment Company, Incorporated. She has worked at music publishing companies, Screen Gems Music, Metric Music, Shine Music, and record companies, 20th Century Records, and Mainstream Records. And now, welcome our host, Irene K.
Good afternoon. Welcome to my third podcast, A Conversation with Irene K. I am elated. I have someone who, first of all, is a friend of mine for 20-some years now. And she has published so many magnificent songs, but why she's here today is to talk about her relationship with Fred Astaire. But she's going to tell you about, at the age of 5 in Buffalo, New York, her sister, who later resided in Beverly Hills, and so did Terri Fricon, who is my guest today, and who is the owner of Fricon Entertainment, a major publishing company, entertainment company, but she can speak to that later. So as not to prolong the conversation, I will introduce my guest to you today, and I will let her tell you about her earlier experience and how it is she met Fred Astaire. But before I do that, she also published a song made famous by James Cleveland. God has shined his light on me, is it?
God has smiled on me.
God has smiled on me. Now, the way I would sing it, although I'm not a singer, is God has shined on me. He has set me free. And she was a partner. Did he write the song, Mr. Jones, or?
Yes, Isaiah Jones Jr.
Isaiah Jones Jr. But I will now introduce you to a guest that I'm really excited about, because I'm a major Fred Astaire fan, and only find out that she too, not only a fan starting at the age of 5, but actually had a working relationship with him. So now let me introduce you to my guest today, Terri Fricon. Welcome, my friend. Now let me introduce you to Terri Fricon. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So you wanted me to talk about when I was 5 years old?
5 years old in Buffalo, New York.
I went, on my 5th birthday, my sister took me to my first movie, which was Easter Parade. And it starred Judy Garland and Fred Astaire. And I fell in love with Fred Astaire then at 5 and remained one of his biggest fans. To this day, I still think he's the most amazing performer. I mean, the man had a career that just went on and on and on. He used to say himself that he retired a half a dozen times.
Yes.
And was always brought back into the business. So years later, when I lived in California and I was looking for a job, I happened to run into an old friend of mine who told me that Fred Astaire had a job open as a receptionist at his record company. Well, of course, I had to have that job.
Yes, of course.
No question about it. So we went back to Tony's office. He made a few phone calls, arranged for an interview. Of course, I was very disappointed to find that the interview was not with Fred Astaire, but with the president of the company, Jackie Mills. And the interview went well, but he did tell me that I didn't get the job, which was very disappointing. And then he told me that I should probably check back with them because he'd hired lots of other people for that job, and Fred Astaire fired them every time he met them for whatever reason. So I kept in touch, and I finally did get the job. Finally had my first day at Ava Records, but Fred Astaire wasn't there. He was in New York. He did, however, call on the phone, and I disconnected him. And then he called back, and I disconnected him again. And I think it was the third time that I disconnected him before I finally got him through to his party. So I was pretty sure I was never going to meet Fred Astaire. But as luck would have it, he didn't fire me. He blamed it on the hotel operator in New York, and my job was saved, and I finally got to meet my hero.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too is that you mentioned that nearly everyone he hired, he fired, but you kept hanging up on him. But of course, you mentioned that he thought the problem occurred in New York and not with you, who really was the villain who hung up on him.
But I didn't tell him.
But you didn't tell him.
No.
And see, that's the good thing. And not only better than that is that he kept you on. So I'll let you tell the rest of the story.
Well, it was, it amazed me that I was able to keep that job, truthfully, because I thought surely I was done for it before I even got to meet him. But a week or two later, he was in California, and I finally got to meet the man of my dreams, Fred Astaire. And I think at that time he was probably in his 60s and I was 18, 17. But he was still the man of my dreams.
Yes, yes, yes.
It was the biggest thrill of my life to meet him. I worked with him for about 4 or 5 years at Ava Records, which was a record company that he owned.
And it's because of him that you went on to do the great things that is identified in your bio. And so tell me about how it is you were able to become a director of his record company. Let us know the steps that you had to go in order to get that position.
Well, there were a lot of people who worked at the company. And my job was receptionist, but it was very boring. I mean, all I had to do was sit at a desk and answer a call director. So I volunteered. I was always volunteering to help somebody do something. So I worked with the people who ran the publishing companies. I worked with the promotion guy. I worked with anybody who needed any help doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the first job opened up, they moved me up to that position. And when he sold the company, I was director of production control, which is a very fancy way of saying that I put all the pieces together for the label copy and the album covers and coordinated the release dates and that sort of thing. It was very much paperwork kind of job. But I loved it, and I loved everything that I learned at Ava Records. But I mostly loved being able to go to lunch with Mr. A, or taking papers for him to sign to the studio, or anything that put me in his company.
Now, do you know why they called him Mr. A? Fred Astaire is his name. And that name, Mr. A, was
just an abbreviation of Astaire.
For Astaire. Okay. And you also mentioned earlier that his mom lived with him right up until his death.
Yes, his mother, who was a stage mother, I mean, she started him off in his career at the age of like 4 years old, I think he was, when he first began performing. She was a lovely lady, and she used to come to the office when she was an old lady of our age at that time.
Your age. I'm sorry.
My age, yes, my age. She was delightful. And his chauffeur used to come to the office a lot too.
Okay.
I think his name was Danny, or I think something like that. It's hard to remember. But yes, she lived with him until she died. She was, I think, 95 when she died.
Okay. Now, you went out to lunch with him a lot. Now, let us understand how famous for the newer generation Fred Astaire, one of the leading actors, dancers, and dresser of the style. He set this tone for style that men today are still wearing styles that he created early on in his career. I would like for you to comment on what you know about his attire. You did say that there is this public Fred Astaire style and the private Fred Astaire style, which he did more accenting with his private style as opposed to his public style, which you would put him wearing these tailor suits, Savile Row in London, and to this day, you'll find his style in many of the men stores, retail stores today. So if you want to comment about his public and private style.
Well, privately, he didn't care that much about clothes. We used to laugh because he'd often wear checks and stripes together, or things that most people wouldn't think about doing. He never wore a belt. He always wore a tie or a scarf in place of a belt. He often wore a scarf around his neck as well. And always a hat, because he was bald, or almost completely bald, and he didn't like wearing his toupee, so he would wear a hat. Not the top hat from the movies,
yes.
Just like a straw hat,
yes.
And colorful, always very colorful. He liked color. He liked color.
Now, at lunch, what would you talk about when you gathered for lunch? What would the conversation, I mean, what are some of the things you guys would talk about?
Strangely enough, he would ask me more questions than I'd get to ask him. but he would talk about everything. I mean, he was very interested in everything that went on in the world. He wasn't a great fan of rock and roll music. So, he would get red in the face and pound the table when we'd want to put out a rock song. But he was a great fan of jazz.
And when you say want to put, that's as a result of the position that you had there at his, being a director at his recording company. Am I describing that correctly?
Well, you make me sound a little more important than I was, but Jackie Mills was the president of the company and director of A&R, and Tommy Wolfe, who wrote Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most, was vice president of the company and co-head of A&R.
Okay.
They were the real movers and shakers behind the company. One of the partners was Elmer Bernstein, the composer, and he was also an artist with the company. And I think our biggest hits at Ava Records were, well, we released some Fred Astaire recordings that did pretty well. Pete Jolly was, I think, the next biggest artist that we had under Elmer. So, but back to what we would talk about, he would respond to whatever questions that I could come up with, And so he would talk about his sister, who he started with in the business. They began when he was, I think, 4 years old.
She was the oldest?
She was older
She
by...
was Ava? Was it Ava?
No, his sister is Adele.
Adele? Okay.
Ava was his daughter.
Okay.
And Adele was like the star of the family. She was the one who wanted to be a performer. He went along for the ride.
Okay.
I remember him saying that over and over again with almost everything. Well, I just went along for the ride. But he was a perfectionist, so he put a lot of hard work into everything he did. But I don't know if the general public is aware that he started in vaudeville at the age of 4 or 5, and went on to become headliners in vaudeville. Then he was on Broadway, starred in Broadway shows. This is with his sister Adele. And they had several hit shows in London as well. So at the time that she retired in 1932, he'd already been performing since 1905. So he'd had a whole career at that point in time. But by the next year, he was starring in movies and working with Ginger Rogers in Flying Down to Rio. And he had a tremendous film career. And then a television career. Oh, he had radio shows that he headlined as well. He had a recording career. I mean, he was really a multi-talented man, and everything he did with great precision and worry. His sister used to call him Moaning Minnie, or Minnie the Moaner.
Yeah,
Because he was always worrying about things. I did write down some of his awards. You want me to read them to you?
Please share them, by all means.
Because I don't know how many people are aware of this. He won an honorary Oscar in 1950. He also won an Oscar as Best Actor for A Towering Inferno. He won Emmys in 1958, 1960, 1961, and 1968 for his television specials. Then he won a Best Acting Emmy for A Family Upside Down, in which he had a straight dramatic role. Mm-hmm. And in between, he was honored. He was the first honoree at the Kennedy Center's honors as well in 1978, and won countless Golden Globe awards and all kinds of other awards. I mean, his footprints are at Grauman's Chinese Theater. He's on the Walk of Fame. He's everywhere, and he's been awarded lots of things after he died.
Yes.
You know, he's continued to get awards because he was the best.
Yes. Yes.
Even Gene Kelly said that Fred Astaire was the best dancer ever.
Yes, and which is a compliment. They really weren't, and I asked you, were they very close friends? And you said they knew each other, but not close like one might think with them being in the same business. So I found that to be interesting. But it's nice that he recognized him as the best dancer.
Well, they both received a joint award from one of the guilds in the late 60s, no, 70s. And that's where he said that Fred Astaire was the greatest dancer that ever lived, the greatest male dancer.
Now, he is everything that you described, the perfectionist and all that. However, also that he was a very shy man. Were you able to see the shyness in him? How did that play out?
Oh, yes, he was very unassuming.
Mm-hmm.
You would have never thought that he was the huge star that he was, because he sounded like an ordinary guy from Omaha, Nebraska,
yes,
where he was born, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He was very bright, very articulate, but very quiet, soft-spoken. He would get angry from time to time, and when he would get angry, he'd get very loud.
Yes, I read that some said he was hard to work with, but you did not experience that personally.
He could be difficult. I mean, I remember once when one of the programmers from the local radio station came by our office, and Mr. A threw him out because he said something that Fred Astaire thought was offensive to the women in the office. He didn't care that this is the guy that had to play his music.
A man before his time, huh?
He was really, I thought he was a great gentleman.
Great. Now also, the love of his life, not his last wife, but his first wife, who later died of cancer.
I believe
and you say that you knew the both. And did he say what she personally to you, what she had meant to him, or your own personal observation of the relationship that they were in?
He did talk about Phyllis. Phyllis was his first wife. I think they were married for 20 some odd years. They married right around the time he started in motion pictures. And he always talked about her and how she designed the house they lived in.
I love that. Design the house we live
And
in.
he would kind
Yes.
of do it that way,
Yeah.
like it was,
I like that.
really special.
Yes.
And it was very hard for him when he lost her. And the kids, I don't think, were that old at the time, because Ava is around my age, and I think Phyllis died in 1958. So Ava would have only been 10, 12 years old, No, maybe a little bit older. So, and Fred Jr. was the older boy. And then there was also a stepson from Phyllis's first marriage that Fred Astaire would talk about often and who would visit the office from time to time. Excuse me, his name was Peter.
And what I find interesting, you mentioned that Ava, the daughter, about your age, but Fred Astaire met Robin Smith, a jockey. She was 34 years old, he was 81. They married. She said it was the happiest time in her life. That's promising news to hear because male, female. But so they were together for 7 years because he died at the age of 88. But she did say they had a delicious marriage. It was a wonderful marriage. But however, what would have she's the same age, the daughter, Ava. What would have been the attraction for him at 81 to marry such a young woman of 34? And by the way, introduced by Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt, which we all know the Vanderbilt family. How that happened is that they at the racetrack, she rode the horse owned by Mr. Vanderbilt. But what does it surprise you that he would marry or have desires for such a young woman and propose and then later marry?
Well, he always said he would never remarry at the time period when I knew him. But, it was a lot of years in between. His wife died in 1958, and he didn't marry Robin until 1981, I guess, right? 1980?
And she was 34 at the time. She's now 77.
But, the big attraction was that she was a jockey. And horse racing was one of his passions. Besides being an actor and a dancer, he owned racehorses. He owned the racehorse Profligate that won about $250,000 worth of prize money, and was a big deal horse. He had a ranch and raised lots of horses. And I don't know if you know, the Fred Astaire Dance Studios were Fred Astaire's studios. They didn't just have his name. They weren't
franchised out. They were his.
He owned them. He started them.
Really?
He trained the original people that worked at the studios.
Did not know that.
It was a passion of his. He finally sold the studios a few years ago. But that was one of his interests. Of course, the record company was another interest he had outside of films.
And if there had not been a Fred Astaire, and you later worked for Fred Astaire, and then, of course, Ava Production, his daughter, had it not happened in that way, we would not be here today talking about Fred Astaire and your many, many, many accomplishments. So, not to embarrass you, but I would love if you would take some time to tell us more clearly what it is you currently do with, let me get this right, Fricon Enterprise. I know you have royalty, publishing, but I will let you tell us more about the business that you do.
Well, when I started Fricon Entertainment in 1981, I had been president of the Filmways Music Group for approximately 7 years at that point. And I wanted to do something more than just music supervision or publishing so I started the company as a kind of a multifaceted independent music department, really. That's how we envisioned ourselves, as a movie studio music department. But my primary love was publishing and songs, and we just did all of that. We published music, we handled music administration for various different companies. I think we have 38 that we handle now. And I continued to do the music supervision work, so I had my little toe in the pond of films. And we clear music. We acquire rights to music for use in everything from movies, television, commercials, video games, what have you. So it's just, we wanted it to be a place where you could get anything you needed that involved music.
Wonderful. May I also say we are of the same age, and to hear you say all that you're still doing is delicious to my ears, because why stop doing the things you can do? You are professional. It is your career, and I'm just elated that you are. And if you don't mind, is it proper if you would name some of the artists that you represent?
Well, I don't represent artists at this point in time.
You own catalogs is that correct?
I own catalogs.
Okay.
Written by some of them songwriters, some of the motion picture companies, production companies. I have a couple of Fred Astaire songs, so I still send royalties to Robin and Ava. I have a catalog that Jack Lemmon created, the actor Jack Lemmon.
Yes.
It's crazy sometimes to look at the people that have recorded some of these songs and that we've worked with through the years. But one of the catalogs I represent is owned by Jerry Bergen. We Three. Do you remember We Five? The group We Five. We have some Bobby Sherman hits, if you remember Bobby Sherman. We published I think 7 or 8 of Bobby's biggest hits. You asked me, and it's hard to really try to remember.
Cagney and Lacey, I'm thinking most of us should know about Cagney and Lacey. I watched the series, and then you were involved with that from the inception to the end. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the music supervisor on the first TV movie that introduced Cagney and Lacey. Mm-hmm. And at that time it was Tyne Daly and Loretta Swit. And then it became a TV series, and the Cagney part was played by, I'm not going to remember her name now, isn't that terrible? By someone other than Loretta Swit. Loretta wasn't available, so I can picture her face. But she only did 6 episodes. Okay. And then they replaced her with Sharon Gless, who is the Cagney that everybody
She's
remembers.
better known, yeah. She's better known, yeah.
And the show ran for 7 years on network TV, and I did every episode. And then they did a couple of TV movies afterwards, a kind of reunion movies, and I worked on those as well. So yeah, Cagney and Lacey was a big part of my life.
Yeah.
it was a real treat working with Barney Rosenzweig, because he had very definite ideas of how he wanted this show to be, and he was the real force behind it. And the show would have been canceled in the very early days if Barney hadn't really gone to bat for it.
So in the industry that you're in, how do you get, is it time and experience? They know your work, people come to you, you go to them. How does it work in an industry that you serve?
Well, I've been very fortunate in my career because almost everything has come to me. I mean, when I moved to Nashville in when we first met, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever it is, I thought surely my music supervision days would be over because of the distance, and I was going to just concentrate on the publishing, but the jobs kept coming. So, I mean, it's a relationship business, of course. And it was more of a relationship business perhaps in the past even than it is now. But one person, if you do a good job, somebody will refer you.
That's right.
And then that person will refer you. And just about every single thing we've ever gotten has come through referral. I mean, I wouldn't know how to advertise our company if I had to advertise it. I mean, I'd probably figure it out.
Yes.
If I had to, we would, But you said retiring? I mean, why would you want to retire from something you love?
Keep doing something that you like.
Absolutely.
And you don't let others discourage you, because they will. You are quick to be out of sight, out of mind. I can think about the relationship with my children, my grandchildren, and they never got enough for me. I mean, Grammy said this, Grammy will let me do it, Grammy this, Grammy that. And the minute they hit a certain number, you would be able to pick their clothes. You go, you have so much fun. You sit there and watch movies you never would have watched on your own. And then they go off and they become their own independent selves. And so but that's life, and that's how it operates. So with this podcast, I am seizing this opportunity because I did not know to the extent your company, the services and the level in which it operates, because now that I know more about your bio and all that you do and those that you represent, I'm going to go back and try to restart with royalties that we're trying to capture with my dad, Booker White. So now I will have, on the business side of it, I'll have a conversation with you as to how we can go about that. But I tell you, if you don't mind, I would like to know more about the music side of what you do and some of the songs that you represent and the artists. And I'm sure, like James Cleveland, what's the name of the song?
God has smiled on me.
God, oh my God, every church I've attended, I've heard that song. And to know that you published that song, I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me. So if you would give us more examples of some of the publishing, the songs that you represent that might be familiar, I would love to hear them. I know one, Ella Fitzgerald.
Well, Ella recorded Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most, which Tommy Wolfe from Ava Records wrote. So, I mean, everything goes back to Fred Astaire and Ava Records. It's so funny. Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most is, I think, number 712 or something on the Great American Songbook list. It's a wonderful jazz classic. Most people think of it as an instrumental, but it's been recorded by so many vocal artists and current artists too. Jane Monheit recorded it recently. One of the Mancini sisters recorded a version of it. Bette Midler recorded it. Barbara Streisand recorded it. I mean, it's been recorded by hundreds of people. So that represents the jazz catalog, and in that catalog we've got the Ballad of the Sad Young Man, that most people think was written by. Now I've done it again.
I can look it up.
It was written by Tommy Wolfe and Fran Landis, but the first recording was an artist, Rod McEwen, thank you, Rod McEwen, recorded it, and most people think that Rod McEwen wrote it, but he didn't.
He did not.
Tommy and Fran wrote it, and it's been recorded by Dionne Warwick, and so many different people. One of my favorites is Houston Person, the saxophonist. He's one of my favorite current artists. And of course we have the Bobby Sherman era, we have the Brady Bunch era.
You represented, in what relationship did you have with the Brady Bunch?
With the Brady Bunch, we worked on the show, my partner and I, Jackie Mills. Jackie produced their recordings. We published their songs, many of their songs. Even though the show was done by Paramount, we co-published with them.
Okay.
Because you had to.
Okay.
And one of their biggest hits was "It's a Sunshine Day," and that's a song that we still get lots of cover versions of, and mostly commercials. It's been used in Tropicana commercial, a yogurt commercial. I mean, it's been used in tons of different commercials.
You have a lot of commercials, do you?
We try.
Okay.
I mean, we're always pitching for commercials. We have a song called Ram-a-Lama Ding Dong. Do you remember that song?
Yes, a long time ago.
That's a long the Edsels, where they act, and we just got a commercial for them just recently for that song. I'm drawing a blank. Forgive me, guys, for those.
Just skip right over it. Go. Really, all that you provided me today, I'm quite impressed, and I'm so thankful that you're sharing it all with us. And that's what's so magnificent about it. And I will continue to do this because God didn't put people in my life that I know doing some important work or have done important work that I will always call upon them to share your gifts, which any good thing that we do really is the gift from God, that we get it, we give it out there. And I wanted to ask you too about, did you ever get into music that you can, the genre of music for the later generations, everything that the things that you recorded, was this more confined to music that a much older generation would enjoy, or do you just do a volume of different genres of music?
Well, at the time, it wasn't older people that enjoyed it.
It was the younger people that enjoyed it. That's true.
So.
Yeah, because I often would say, how is it that when you get to be older, I guess I would be considered older. Sometimes I have to think about that. But then, like Little Richard and all the music back when, the Coasters and the Spinners, if you love the movie then, and now that you're older, why would you not love it? So when I think about it, yeah, it makes sense what you said. Not so much the question I posed, but it makes sense.
I'm not much into rap music. That's the one genre that I really haven't spent a lot of time doing anything with. Although we had a collaboration on God Has Smiled on Me. with a major rap artist that has not been released yet, and hopefully will
Oh, it's
be
currently in
released
the
soon.
working? Oh,
But I can't say who.
You cannot say who, but it's currently in the, oh boy, I'm getting firsthand news here. This is delicious. But I tell you, there's a song, and I post on Facebook. See, sometime to justify my interest in rap, I look at it from the poetry side of it, the lyrics. If it's clean, and
Well, that's the thing.
yeah, if it's clean, because I go to the clean versions. So, but the clean versions does not always change the subject. And but music back when Ray Charles were recording, shake that thing, baby, shake that thing. And even going back to the 30s, they would apple pie may mean something, and if you follow the lyrics, you know what the
60-minute man.
yeah. So, but even currently, I will listen to certain rap. Now, what is the song where she said, "My girlfriend, she got her own money," and that whole I put that on 2 weeks ago, and I don't put it on too often. It's because I don't want to be defined personally by. But if the lyrics are good, and I can put it out there, but I just have a passion for all music. Billy Eckstine was one of my favorite artists.
Oh, he was wonderful.
Yes.
I knew Billy.
You knew Billy?
Sure.
Oh my God. You must have, in memory of my late girlfriend, Dr. Helen Burleson. That was her favorite artist in the whole world. So tell us a little bit about how it is you know Billy Eckstine.
Well, my sister, my brother-in-law was a pianist.
Okay.
And in the music business.
And who was your brother-in-law?
His name was Larry Green.
Okay.
They were friends with Billy and his wife. And Guy Eckstein is one of my friends on Facebook.
Oh.
His son. So I still kind of keep in touch a little bit that way.
Okay. And how old was his son? How old is his son?
Oh, gosh. Billy's got to be, the guy's got to be, I hate to say it because I don't want to say the wrong age.
Okay.
He's probably younger than 50.
So what did you know about, I mean, describe his personality and how it is you met him? Tell us a little something about
we
that.
weren't close friends or anything, but he lived down the street from my partner, Jackie Mills.
Okay.
So between my sister and Jackie, that was really my connection
Okay.
to Billy Eckstein. And the talent. I've always been attracted to people with talent.
Me
and
too.
he was one
Yeah.
of the major acts of all time. Of course, I was in love with Johnny Mathis when I was a teenager. Who wasn't in love with
Did
Johnny
you actually,
Mathis?
at a later time, did you meet him?
Yeah, well, yes, I did meet him through my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law,
Green?
Larry Green. Johnny was performing, I think, at the Sands Hotel. I think it was the Sands Hotel in Vegas. And we got to go to the show and went backstage and met him afterwards. And that was my first meeting with Johnny Mathis.
But you didn't represent him with your music.
I was a teenager at the time.
Yes.
He was just a major crush. I thought he was such a wonderful singer.
Yeah, I had a crush on him too, but he never did come around to having a crush on me.
No, he didn't have a crush on me either.
No, he wouldn't have had a crush on Jane. Okay.
But what can you
Good-looking man. Good-looking man.
Very, very handsome man. Very handsome. He still is to this day.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
And he can still sing.
Yes, he can. I am a fan, and chances are, and I'm trying to think, well, chances are really was my favorite. But now your list, you have a lengthier list of those that you represented in the music industry. Who come to mind if I ask you to give me a list of well-known artists, which we discussed earlier, but I put a lot on you, so I don't know how much you can just spill out now, but I was quite impressed with the list of artists that you represent.
Well, through the years, I've worked with a lot of various different songwriters, and probably the best known were from the from the Screen Gems days.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't really know songwriters. You know artists.
Yes.
You don't know the songwriters who, like, if I gave you a list of the great songwriters from that particular period, you would probably recognize Neil Sedaka and Neil Diamond.
Sure.
And Billy Joel.
And he still draws a major crowd. Billy Joel, major crowd.
But you probably wouldn't recognize Jack Keller or Jeff Berry or Ellie Greenwich or Barry Mann.
Mm-hmm. Barry Mann, yes.
Well, of course, Barry had a couple of hits as an artist as well. Mm-hmm. But they wrote those great songs. The list of songs that would probably fill a book 4 inches thick, of all the hit songs that they wrote. So I've always been a songwriter person more than an artist person.
Did you ever meet Nat King Cole?
No, I didn't, and that was a major disappointment in my life. I would have loved to have met him, but he died so young.
Yes, he did. From cigarette smoke, right?
I think it was lung cancer.
Yeah.
I think he was only 45 years old when he died.
And I saw Lena Horne, and I was introduced to her, but I had someone to take a picture, but I didn't write down their name so they would be able to send the picture to me. So, but I loved her. I was a great fan of hers as a child. And she was an advocate. I don't know how many people know it, but she was a civil rights advocate as well.
Oh, I know it. I mean, her one of my best friends is her niece.
Who's your best friend?
Her name is Michelle Hart.
Uh-huh.
And Michelle's Uncle Lenny was married to Lena Horne.
Really?
So,
really? Now, is she still living? Not Lena Horne, your friend.
Oh, yes, of course.
I must meet her. I have 1,000 Lena Horne questions. I love every oh my God. And her daughter wrote a couple books on the life of her family. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can go on YouTube, and her daughter was married to the Liza Minnelli's father, Lumet.
Oh,
did you know that?
Lumet?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, for married a number of years. And you can go on YouTube and put, I cannot think of her daughter's name, but you can just put Lena Horne's daughter speaking on the book she wrote about her mom and about the family. It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, for me personally, I could sit here all day and talk about this industry. Of course, I consider myself a part of the industry, and that my dad, Booker White, whose name is on the sidewalk, Beale Street, and also the annual Blues Festival in Aberdeen, Mississippi, is named for my dad, the Booker White Blues Festival.
We should go sometime.
You'll go with me?
Sure.
I will be on the phone. I'll call you. We go. And also, he's in the Blues Hall of Fame. He's also the Grammy Hall of Fame, the Grammy Blues Hall of Fame, the same year that the Rolling Stones. And additionally, if you want to see the actual performance with the Rolling Stone, Mick Jagger, you go 1993, Shake 'Em On Down, and he's actually singing the song. He credits my dad. And that's why I say to you, I say all that to say this. We've been friends 25 years. I should have hired you from the day I met you. And maybe I would be in Beverly Hills today. We wouldn't just be sitting here talking about Beverly Hills because you get the job done. Yeah, and yeah, of course, you recently had personal business to deal there, estate matters there in Beverly Hills. And because when I was young, I saw myself living anywhere I so choose up in my head.
And Beverly Hills?
And I was, honey, I was living in Beverly Hills up here. And so,
why?
Because I knew I would get all the parade, your hit parades, I would get the parade of stars as a child, because when I was raised, we didn't have funds. We were limited, but I didn't limit myself any place up here. So I traveled many places, and Beverly Hills was my favorite place to lodge. At a time, mind you, that Nat King Cole was being burned out of his house. And
his house wasn't in Beverly Hills.
I know, I was going to say.
In Hancock Park.
In Hancock Park, which is still prominent. Yeah, many black artists live there today. I was going to go on to say that. So, but Beverly Hills.
It was very restricted at one time.
Yes, it was.
If I remember correctly, they burned something and
they did
KKK into his lawn or something.
They did
horrible.
that. But that didn't keep me from.
It didn't make him move.
No, it did not. And I kept my head in Beverly Hills. Eventually, I went and toured Beverly Hills, and I saw George Burns' house. It was a very simple house. It had a garage on the front, 2.5 car garage. But see, what's so delicious is that meeting you 25 years ago, we would meet at Chop House or other place. We would talk about a ton of different things, but we really never got around to talking about our individual careers.
No, we didn't.
But that's good, because now that I'm pulling for any good thing I can hold on to, and to personally know folks like yourself. And that's why I tell people, you always find your life to be exciting. And being exciting doesn't mean it's all about you. It's about the people God put into your life. And you've consistently been in my life. And I will share, well, I can't share this because I wanted to share something that I was going to share, but then people would know my business. And I don't want people to know my business, so I'm going to let that part of the conversation go. But you stepped up to the plate, and you were willing to accommodate me. Let's just say when I was waiting for one of my properties to become available.
That was...
And that was so delicious. You didn't have to do that. You would say,
we're friends.
Yeah,
that's what friends do.
But you see, that's what life is all about. You don't have to lie your way through life. You don't have to try to jump through hoops through life, because all your gifts are right here. You're my gift. You're my gift. We talk about anything and everything, but never really talked about what we're talking about today.
Well, I guess we became friends first.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What we did for a living didn't really matter.
It did not matter. But I will tell my audience, you're going to get the full length of her life career, because we're going to edit, and part of the edit is just going to give you a line by line, a career path that she's been on. And Fred Astaire, was he a sexy man?
Oh, I thought so.
Holy mackerel. And is that why he was able to get this 34-year-old woman? Robin Smith, the jockey, she said that's the best relationship she's ever been in. And that man was 81 years old when they got married. And of course, 7 years. But so what made him
he was
so...
considerably younger than that when I met him. He was only in his 60s.
Yeah, because you met him in the early 60s.
He was only in his 60s.
Yeah. But what made women loved him?
I think all women loved him.
Yes, they did.
He had, well, first of all, he was very polite.
Yes.
You know, and he just made you feel important.
Yes.
Just being around him made you feel. And he was so debonair too. You know,
Did he
which
smell
was-
good?
Oh yeah.
Did he ever share with you what fragrance he wore?
No, that never came up.
Okay. But he.
What did amaze me though is that we would sit and have lunch at Cyrano's restaurant
Cyrano's, oh my God.
on Sunset Boulevard,
Oh yes.
and they had a outdoor patio that was one table wide with a chair on each side and enough space for the waiters to pass by. And we would sit there and have lunch very often because it was right across the street from our office, and nobody ever seemed to recognize him. It was just amazing to me that people would walk right past and never even see that that was Fred Astaire.
But you did say he wore hats
Yeah.
because he didn't want to wear his toupee.
And I guess people don't, if they don't expect to see somebody, they don't see him.
Yeah, if
you
they
know?
don't equate him by the way they would know him.
But I don't ever remember anybody stopping and asking for an autograph. So he felt very comfortable
Yes.
sitting out there on the sidewalk, just like any ordinary person.
The food
And
is
he wasn't an ordinary person.
no extraordinary. Yes.
Well, somebody that had the career that
Yeah,
man had.
yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing that in his 80s he was still working.
Yes, he was. Obviously, a 34-year-old wife. Yeah. Cirios, the restaurant. Was the food delicious there?
Yes, it was very good.
Because let me tell you
The
how.
chocolate mocha frosts were my favorite.
Oh, really?
On the menu, yes.
But I would not have expected that to have been on their menu. And I
Now, are
tell
you
you
thinking
why.
of Cyrano or are you thinking of Ciro's?
I'm talking about the one with all the sketches of all the artists, the
Um,
black and white sketches on the wall. Because as a child, I covered that restaurant. I'm telling you.
So you're thinking of the nightclub, Ciro's.
Okay.
Cyrano was a restaurant, just a regular old
Okay.
restaurant.
Okay.
And it was on Sunset Boulevard in the 8700 block.
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
there anymore, but
Oh.
but it was a pretty famous place
Yeah.
during its time as well.
Right.
I never really got to go to Ciro's because it closed before I was
Yeah, that was
old enough.
it was a big deal. You would find Elizabeth Taylor.
Everybody.
Did you ever meet Elizabeth Taylor?
No.
You never did. I loved her.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
too.
yeah. She was an avid. She was what would you say for civil rights? She was really out front a long time before it was okay to support the movement. She was always out there doing. And of course, later when AIDS, she was an advocate.
She was a big advocate for AIDS.
Oh yeah, yeah.
AIDS research.
Right.
Well, because of Rock Hudson.
Right, Rock Hudson. Oh my God, I love that guy. As a child, 11, 12 years old, I would go to the theater and watch him, especially the Army movies. And of course, he was famous with Doris Day. They did a series of movies. You see how we're talking today? This is just like when we're out dining. But it's just delicious, just recapturing the memory of all of these artists. Now, and one that I love, and I'm going to ask you, Sidney Poitier. Did you have the occasion to meet him?
I did meet Sidney Poitier, and he was such a nice man.
Yes.
Trying to remember the name of it's a hotel restaurant on Doheny. And it was in that restaurant that we met. He was having lunch with his wife and some other people. And I was
When was
there.
this? Do you remember the year?
Oh golly, probably in the 70s.
Okay.
At some point in the 70s. And we came in. I don't remember who I was with. Probably my sister. All my adventures were with my sister. And he invited us to join him for lunch. So we did. And it was great. I mean, we didn't get to be great friends
Yes,
or anything like
yes.
that, but I was so impressed that he actually invited us to join him for lunch.
Yeah, he influenced my life in a good way. I never met him, but he definitely a great inspiration in my life. And I recently purchased 2 books on Amazon after he passed away. And did you know he had a daughter to die prior to his death? Beautiful
No.
girl. Yeah. But he was one of my favorites in the industry. Yeah.
Well, he was a landmark actor. I mean, he did so much. I worked on the movie A Patch of Blue that he was in,
Oh,
but I didn't get to meet him during the making of the
he won an
movie.
Academy Award for that movie, did he not? It's about the blind girl.
Right. I don't know if he won an Academy Award for it, but he should have won some award for it for sure. But I worked on the music end of it, and he wasn't involved. In
Oh,
any
you
of the
were
music.
involved with the music side of it.
for that
Patch of
particular
Blue. Okay.
for that particular
Well, that's
movie.
good to know.
And in fact, I also worked on the soundtrack album.
Okay.
For Patch of Blue, but I didn't meet him at that time. I didn't meet him until quite a few years afterwards, but I was able to at least say that.
Yeah.
at lunch.
Yeah, and he was a very
So,
very distinguished gentleman. Very nice man.
he had such a great speaking voice.
Yes, he did.
You know,
He only went through, what, first grade? That's,
well, I read someplace that he didn't know how to read when he came to the United States.
Right.
And he was working, I guess, as a
busboy.
dishwasher or something.
and this man sat with him in a booth.
We read the same article.
I'm telling you, I'm not just sitting here unknowing and not knowing. I mean, I cover these people. I love these people.
Well, that was such a great story. how he
Yes,
was
yes,
taught to read
indeed.
by that. Was it
Absolutely.
Italian?
I thought a Jewish guy, but
Oh,
Italian
maybe.
guy could have been.
Well, Jewish Italian is very
it's
similar.
not
I mean,
relevant to the story, but very
well, I always
important.
figured that whether you're Jewish or you're Italian,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. And
It is.
And the mothers are exactly
it
the
is.
same.
It is.
Jewish mother, Italian mother.
That's
same
right.
thing.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm enjoying this. What time is it, Cedric? Are we on? This is delicious. Do you see what happens when you're with a friend? It doesn't become a podcast anymore. Well, I tell you, this has been delicious. I've enjoyed it, and don't you think we covered quite a bit? But all that we did not cover will be covered in the audio when we edit, and we are going to edit, and so my podcast will be available. If I wanted to say, to be more accurate, let's say Thursday. And I will, of course, let you know, and you will be able to see. But you will always go to YouTube, A Conversation with Irene K. And I do hope that you will enjoy this show with Terri Fricon Entertainment, as much as I have enjoyed her as my guest today. So I will look forward with you joining me for my next show, which will be April 19th. Andre Prince, owner of Prince Hot Chicken. She recently had Shaquille O'Neal, and I did feature those 3 pictures on my Facebook page. So we're gonna really have a good show, and I ask you to join me April 19th. And this is my 3rd show, and that will be my 4th show. And then of course May 10th, I'm speaking between shows. We're going to have a show on suicide, depression, and suicide. And then of course later we'll have a motivational speaker. We're going to have a comedian. So there's a lot to look forward to. And again, thank you for joining me on my 3rd podcast with my guest, Terri Fricon, A Conversation with Irene K.